Do you ever notice how people only pay attention after the damage is done? They ignore you when you're quiet, laugh when you stumble, and vanish when you're at your lowest. But the second you stop explaining yourself, suddenly everyone wants to know what you're up to. Funny, isn't it, how silence speaks louder than desperation, how stillness makes them nervous? They can't stand not knowing what's coming. And that's exactly why this right now is the turning point. Not because you said something, but because you didn't have to. Just watch. You'll see why. Silence. That thing they all underestimate, that strange, eerie pause that makes people uncomfortable. You walk into a room and you're not smiling, you're not talking, suddenly you're the problem. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you've disrupted their little illusion, their idea of what normal should look like. You see, most people need noise, chaos, chatter, movement. It keeps them from having to face the truth. But when someone goes quiet, that's when the alarm bells start ringing. Not because you're broken. No. But because they know you're starting to see clearly. It's funny, isn't it, how quickly they get uncomfortable when the mask slips. When you stop pretending, when you stop entertaining, the silence becomes a mirror, and guess what? They don't like what they see. You used to beg for attention, approval, a pat on the head. Not anymore. Now they notice your silence like a bomb waiting to go off. They study your movements, read into your expression, try to decode your next move. Because silence doesn't mean weakness. It means calculation. When you were crying, they looked away. When you were shouting, they laughed. But now you're quiet, and suddenly they're watching closely. Why? Because they know something shifted. They can feel it. Like a storm that hasn't broken yet, but you can smell it in the air, that tension, that pressure, that strange stillness before the world changes. That's what silence really is. It's not absence. It's the calm before detonation. People think power is loud, flashy, explosive. They think it announces itself with a bang, but real power creeps in, quiet, like a shadow in the corner. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't raise its voice. It simply takes control. And when you understand that, when you embrace that silence, you stop reacting. You stop giving them the satisfaction of seeing you bleed. You watch, you wait, and you make every word, every move, every breath deliberate. They used to think you were predictable, an open book. But now you've shut the pages. Now you're writing in ink they can't read, and it drives them mad. They poke, they prod, they try to provoke a response, any response, but you've gone still. You've become the quiet they can't control. And in that silence, you've found your edge. Let them underestimate you. Let them think you've fallen off. Let them think you're done. That's when you have them exactly where you want them. Because when you're quiet, you see everything. You hear what they say when they think you're not listening. You notice who claps when you lose. You learn the rhythm of their games, their lies, their masks, and you start playing by different rules. They don't fear you when you're loud. They expect loud. They prepare for loud. But when you say nothing, when you vanish into yourself, when you stop defending your name, that's when the tables turn. That's when the power shifts. Because now they're reacting to you, Every second of your silence echoes in their heads. Every breath you take makes them second-guess their own. You've become a presence. Silence is a weapon, but only in the hands of those who know how to wield it. Most people are too scared of their own thoughts to be quiet. They fill the air with nonsense, hoping to drown out the fear. But not you. You've learned to sit with the silence, to own it, to become it, and that terrifies them. You're not here to explain. You're not here to perform. You're not here to fix what they broke. You're here because you finally understand that silence makes the loudest noise when power shifts without warning. They always want a reason, don't they? A neat little story to explain the change. Why you stopped answering. Why you walk different now. Why you look at them like they're already dead to you. But the truth is, they don't deserve your explanation. They had their chance. They played their games, pulled their strings, laughed when you broke. And now that the curtain's closed, they suddenly want an encore, but you're done dancing for an audience that only clapped when you bled. People fear what they don't understand, but more than that, they fear what they can't control. And mystery terrifies them. You used to be predictable, always showing up, always proving yourself, always trying to be seen. You handed them every version of yourself, hoping just one would be enough. But now you've gone silent. Now you've gone dark. And they, panicking. They poke around, ask questions, send messages disguised as concern. You good? Just checking in. No, they're not checking in. They're checking up. Trying to see if you've moved on, grown past them, started building without their permission. You became a question mark in their story. And nothing haunts people more than a chapter they didn't get to finish. You stopped being easy to read, and now they don't know what page you're on, or if they're even in the book anymore. You see, people are drawn to chaos as long as it isn't theirs. They don't want to face their reflection, so they keep others predictable, labeled, safe. But when you pull away, when you take your narrative and set it on fire, suddenly they're left in the smoke, coughing, scrambling, wondering where it all went wrong. And the funniest part? You didn't scream. You just stopped showing up the way they expected you to. And now they talk. Of course they talk. They've changed. They're not the same anymore. No, you're not. You stopped being their puppet. You stopped shrinking to fit the frame. You became an unsolvable riddle, a mirror they can't stand to look into. And with every unanswered call, every unread message, every silence that follows their question, you're teaching them something. You're teaching them that respect is earned, not demanded. When you were predictable, they had power. They could twist your words, guilt-trip your loyalty, manipulate your light. But now they've got nothing, just static where your name used to echo. You've become absence with weight. You've become a legend they can't touch. And the more they reach, the more they realize you're gone. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And they weren't invited. People respect mystery more than explanation because mystery can't be manipulated. Mystery keeps them guessing, keeps them chasing ghosts. It reminds them they never really knew you to begin with. They just knew the version you let them see. The obedient one, the hopeful one, the one that kept bending to be enough. But the new you, the quiet you, that's power they can't predict. And what they can't predict, let them talk, let them wonder, let them think what they want. That's part of the art. You've painted yourself in shadow, and now they're squinting at silhouettes trying to guess what comes next. And in that confusion, in that delicious uncertainty, you've taken back control. You're no longer explaining yourself to people who never listened anyway. You're not giving closure to those who broke you open. You're not being noble. You're being real. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't rage, it's silence. It's showing them how little of your energy they're worth. It's watching them spiral while you build quietly, deliberately, ruthlessly. They think they need answers, but what they really need is to understand that the version of you who needed their approval is never coming back. And when that clicks, when they finally realize they're no longer part of the equation, that's when the panic sets in. That's when the mask slips. That's when they understand people respect mystery more than explanation. Because mystery, my friend, mystery is power. They want to be heroes in stories they never bled for. They show up only after the smoke clears, wiping dust from their sleeves like they were there in the fire with you. But they weren't. They were the ones holding the lighter. They watched from the sidelines, whispering, mocking, secretly hoping you'd stay down just long enough for them to rise above you without getting their hands dirty. But here's the part they never expected. You got up. Not gracefully, no. You got up crooked, eyes darker, smile twisted. And they didn't like that version of you, because that version of you remembers everything. You remember the silence when you cried out, the laughter behind your back when you stumbled, the eyes that looked past you when you needed someone to look at you and see more than just weakness. And now they come crawling with new words, dressed in fake concern, hoping maybe, just maybe, you'll forget who they were when it mattered. But you don't forget. You count. You catalog. Not out of bitterness, but clarity. A ledger of loyalty, of absence, of betrayal. See, pain has a funny way of carving clarity into you. When everything falls apart, the masks do too. And what's left underneath? It's never what you expected. Friends vanish, family folds, lovers flinch, and there you are, in the wreckage, realizing the only person who showed up for you was you. That changes a man. It breaks something, yes, but it also builds something sharper, something colder, something that doesn't flinch anymore when people walk away. They say you've become distant, cold, dark. But what they don't understand is that you were forged in darkness. You didn't choose it. It chose you. And now you don't fear it. You wear it like armor. You stopped waiting for a rescue that was never coming. You stopped expecting apologies that were never honest. You stopped playing nice just to keep people who were never real. And they noticed. Oh, they noticed. They talk about how you've changed, but they never talk about what they did to make that change necessary. They remember your reaction, but forget their role. Convenient, isn't it? The way people edit the past to keep themselves innocent. But you remember it all, not to dwell, no, not that. You remember so you never fall for the illusion again. You remember so the next time someone tries to hand you poison wrapped in charm, you recognize the taste. This new version of you, it's uncomfortable for them because it has boundaries. It says no. It walks away without explanation. It doesn't apologize for putting itself first. That scares people, especially the ones who benefited from your self-destruction, the ones who feasted on your silence. They miss the old you, not because they loved you, but because the old you was easier to manipulate, more pliable, less dangerous. But the thing about falling apart is, if you survive it, you learn. You learn how to rebuild without the pieces that broke you. You learn the power of solitude. You learn that peace isn't always quiet. It's knowing you don't owe your energy to people who drain it. You learn that love, respect, loyalty, they aren't just words, they're currencies. And if someone isn't willing to pay the price, they don't get a seat at your table. They don't get to ask why you're silent now, why you stopped texting, why you don't show up like you used to. They forfeited the right to your presence when they turned absence into a pattern. And now they're confused, unsettled, watching you rise from a distance, wondering how they lost access to something they thought they'd always have. That's the part they never planned for. That you'd get tired, that you'd grow teeth, that you'd stop bleeding for people who only showed up when it was convenient. So now you walk different, speak different, smile less but mean it more. You don't perform anymore. You don't seek validation from the same mouths that once spit on your name. You learn to validate yourself. And once you taste that kind of freedom, you can't go back. They can't reach you anymore. You're on a different frequency now. One built on truth, not illusion. And they're still stuck trying to figure out how you turned your pain into power. They all laughed when you said you had a dream. Not the polite kind of laugh, the kind that stings, that lingers, the kind that tells you without words, you? Really? They don't say it out loud, but you can hear it in the silence, in the eye rolls, in the way they change the subject when you speak. They treat your ambition like it's a disease. They talk about being realistic, like that's the medicine you're supposed to swallow. But deep down, they're not protecting you from failure. They're protecting themselves from the discomfort of watching you become what they couldn't. You see, people love it when you stay small, when you keep your head down, when you play the part you've always played. Because if you rise, if you break the mold, if you dare to believe in something bigger, it forces them to confront the prison they never tried to escape. Your progress is a mirror, and not everyone likes what they see in a mirror. They don't want to be reminded of what they gave up on, of how they settled. So instead, they call you crazy, they call you obsessed, they call you unrealistic, and they do it with smiles, with love, with that tone that pretends to care, but reeks of fear. But you kept going, even when the doors slammed, even when no one clapped. Even when all you had was grit and rage and a vision so clear it hurt to look away. You didn't need their applause. You needed silence. Silence sharpens the blade. You learned to walk through fire without flinching. You learned that the world doesn't give you permission, it waits to see if you'll break. And if you don't, if you rise, then they pretend they always believed in you. That's the trick. They rewrite the story when you win, so you keep moving. Not because it's easy, not because you're fearless, but because something inside you refuses to die. That little flicker, that voice that says, there's more. They tried to snuff it out, and maybe for a while they did. Maybe you believed them, maybe you shrank, maybe you played small because you thought that's what love looked like, acceptance with conditions. But now you know better. Now you realize that real love doesn't ask you to shrink. Real love fans the flame. It hands you gasoline. You remember every laugh, every doubt, every time they looked at you like you were delusional. Good. Don't forget it. That's fuel. That's memory. That's the ache that turns into action. You don't have to prove them wrong. You just have to prove yourself right. And the more they talk, the more you build, quietly, ruthlessly, with precision, with madness. Not because you're trying to hurt them, but because you're done letting them hurt you. They don't understand that failure doesn't scare you anymore. Rejection, you've tasted it so many times it's almost sweet now, it's familiar. But regret, that's the one thing you won't tolerate. You'd rather die on the climb than rot at the bottom pretending you never wanted to go up in the first place. And that makes you dangerous. That makes you untouchable. Because a person who no longer fears falling can fly in ways the cautious never will. So let them laugh. Let them whisper. Let them watch. You're not here to be understood. You're not here to make them comfortable. You're not here to follow rules written by cowards and enforced by sheep. You're here to burn, to become, to carve something immortal from the wreckage. And when you do, when the dust clears and they're standing there, jaws open, wondering how the hell you made it, you'll smile, not out of arrogance, out of memory, because you remember the nights you almost gave up, the mornings you couldn't get out of bed, the demons you danced with, the silence you screamed into. They see the result. They never saw the war, but you did. You lived it. And now you're the storm. They tell you to be patient, to wait your turn, to sit still while life sorts itself out like it's some kind of orderly queue. But you've seen what waiting gets people. Dusty dreams, broken clocks, faces full of fake smiles pretending everything's okay while the inside rots. Waiting isn't noble. It's a slow death disguised as discipline. And they love that version of you, the quiet one, the tame one, the one that nods along, follows instructions, goes nowhere fast. But you were never made to wait. You were made to move, to push, to bend the world until it screams back. Every second you hesitate is a second someone else grabs what could have been yours. That's the part they don't talk about. That while you're wondering if now is the right time, someone out there is already halfway to the finish line with half your talent but twice your audacity. Confidence wins, not caution. The world doesn't belong to those who wait. It belongs to those who strike while everyone else is still asking for permission. You think there's some cosmic scoreboard keeping track of how polite you've been? There isn't. There's just noise. And noise doesn't reward the careful. It rewards the loud, the raw, the ones who jump without checking if there's a net. You've been told to prepare, to practice, to perfect before you act. But here's the truth, you'll never be fully ready. No one ever is. The ones who make it, they didn't start because they were ready. They started because they were done waiting. Because they realize life doesn't come with guarantees, it comes with gut checks. And the moment you finally step forward, shaky, unsure, half certain, you unlock something the cautious never will. Momentum. And once you have that, the game changes. The funny thing is, people will start calling you lucky. Lucky. As if they didn't see you bleeding behind closed doors, fighting the voices that told you to play it safe. As if they didn't hear the silence you broke with your first step. They'll act like it was all inevitable, like you were always going to make it. But you know the truth. You know how many nights you sat in the dark trying to convince yourself you were worth the risk. How many fake smiles you wore just to survive the day. They never see the beginning. They only see the explosion. And they call it fate. But fate doesn't pick favorites. It just waits. It waits for the one bold enough to knock the door down instead of waiting for it to open. And maybe that's you. Maybe you're the one who stops asking and starts taking, not because you're cruel, but because you're done being polite to a world that only respects pressure. Pressure breaks stone. Pressure builds diamonds. Pressure makes people uncomfortable. And that's where change begins. You've been sitting on your power, thinking it was a burden, thinking you had to hide it until the world was ready. But what if the world's waiting for you to stop hiding? What if the fear you've been dragging around is actually the key, the edge, the proof that you're close, not broken? That pounding in your chest isn't anxiety, it's the war drum. Before the strike. You don't need more time, you need more truth. And the truth is this, the only thing standing between you and what you were meant for is the lie you keep telling yourself about why you can't have it. So go ahead, break rhythm, defy logic, show up messy, flawed, unprepared, burn the playbook they handed you. They'll hate it at first, 'cause they're still in line, waiting for their number to be called. But deep down, a part of them will wish they had your nerve. Because that's what this world needs. Not more sheep, more wolves, more fire starters. More people willing to say, I'm not waiting anymore, and mean it with every inch of their being.